All right, it is 9 o'clock. Welcome to Future Librarians Day, our second annual one. I'm really excited that we're doing this again. It was a lot of fun last year, and I hope we have as much fun this year. The first panel we have for you is the Collections and Archives panel. I'm going to stop sharing my screen with this lovely graphic so you can see our panelists a little bit better. And I'm just going to start for who I have on my screen. Introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about what your job responsibilities are and where you are at your institution. So Molly, we'll start with you.
Howdy, everybody. My name is Molly Cameron. I use they, them pronouns. I am the user experience librarian at Mohawk Valley Community College. As part of that, I am also the liaison to art, engineering, and a couple other crunchy sciences. So we do a little bit of everything in the community college world.
Thank you. Carla?
Hi, I'm Carla Block. I am a librarian and coordinator of reference services at Tompkins Cortland Community College in Dryden. I have a 12-month position. It's tenure track. We are faculty. My primary responsibilities, there's 2.8 of us librarians, and we all kind of do a little bit of everything, reference, instruction, collection development. My subject responsibilities are nursing and health, primarily science, the STEM courses, and I'm also the academic integrity librarian.
All right, thank you. Angela?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Angela Hockstead. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the subject librarian for political science, public administration, public policy, and law at the University at Albany. I have collection development responsibilities. I work reference shifts. I do instruction. I'm also on the scholarly communications team.
Great, thank you. And last but not least, Melissa.
Hi, everyone. I'm Melissa McMullen. I'm the project archivist at the M.E. Gernander Department of Special Collections and Archives, which is at the University of Albany. As a project archivist, I kind of do a little bit of everything. It more reflects my funding source as opposed to my more daily activities. I am funded by an endowment that gets sent to the state side, so SUNY still pays me, but that's sort of where my title comes from. But we do a little bit of everything in our department. So we serve on our public services desk, answer remote reference, help in-person researchers. We do instruction with different classes that come and use our materials that are housed in our department, and AV formatting, metadata work, kind of a little bit of everything.
Great, thank you, Melissa. And I'm Amanda Lau. I use she, her pronouns, and I will be moderating this session. I am also at UAlbany, and I am the outreach and marketing librarian there. All right, so we'll start with our very first question, and this is for everyone, so I'll just go down the line. What does the day-to-day look like for your position? So walk us through a day of what you do. So Molly, we'll start with you.
Right. So because we're doing a little bit of everything, especially in my position as the user experience librarian, I do a lot of outreach and wacky stuff. So I usually spend 1 or 2 hours at the reference desk, just watching the online chat and helping people as they come in. So we do a lot of reader advisory and helping with citations and things like that. Mostly it's just filling the printer back up and logging people into computers. Then I catch up on 1,001 emails from all over the place and the million different listservs. A lot of times I'm talking directly with department heads, especially I've got a really tight relationship with the art department or the School of Art, I guess. Me and the dean are besties. So we'll talk about new programs that they have coming up or different needs that they see coming in. And I also do a lot of specialized instruction just for the arts classes. So one of the projects we've been working on a lot is bringing departments other than like English and history in for library instruction sessions. So being the liaison for that department goes far beyond like collection development and stuff. It's really building relationships with them. Then I sometimes work with the clubs that I'm a part of. So I am the co-advisor for the Anime Haven Nerd Club, basically. So I'll go to those meetings. Tomorrow, actually, we're putting on a small convention on campus. So I've been running around ragged, putting together TakaCon. And then sometimes we have different programs or things. So on Monday afternoons, we do this program tentatively titled Shut Up and Write, where it's basically just like a productivity sort of space where we all sit on the comfy couches and anybody who wants to show up can just sit and write in a space where other people are sitting and writing, which is really helpful for breaking out of writer's block and procrastination and things. And then I work with the student advisory group. So we get feedback from students either in person through that group, or we send out a bunch of surveys and things to students and faculty to make sure that the library is doing stuff that they actually care about instead of whatever we want. So lots of connecting with people, getting feedback, building relationships, and making up my job as I go along.
Sounds like a lot of fun, especially the anime component. That sounds like a blast. Carla, what does your day-to-day look like?
Okay, well, the day-to-day can vary depending on the time of the semester. During the academic year, it can be hard to get a lot of other, extra things done. So we do some of that in the summer and in January when there's no classes being held. Generally, I will have a reference shift most days. We do our shifts in 4-hour chunks. We cover the desk from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. Monday through Friday. So between the three of us, we kind of split up the weekly schedule. And when we're on the desk, we're doing both in person and our chat reference. So sometimes there's some juggling involved with that. I do a lot of work with students. Sometimes they'll stop by my office. They might have an appointment already. They might just wander in. Whatever reference traffic we get. My office is kind of right at the start of our stacks as well, so I get a lot of people kind of looking hesitant and coming into my door and asking for help. I leave my door open most of the time, so I get a lot of interruptions, which I don't mind. I kind of set it up that way, and students kind of learn, like, if the door is shut, I'm probably working with somebody or I'm in a meeting or something, but otherwise they're free to just come on in. Sometimes, because we are a small organization, we'll be doing double duty. Like, we might take our laptop to a meeting because we're the reference person. And so people kind of get used to hearing our chat go off while we're in the middle of a meeting. Try to squeeze in some of the collection development things, weeding, looking at new books, ordering books, and also some of the campus service that we're expected to do, so being on committees and that kind of thing. But like I said, kind of varies by the time of the year. Summer is much slower in terms of interaction with students, but we get a lot of extra, special projects done and catch up on things that we haven't been able to get to during the rest of the year. But some of my subject areas aren't real big library users, and others, like nursing, are huge library users. So that's that kind of affects how busy we are. I'm lucky right now, the main nursing classes, all their papers are kind of wrapped up for the most part. And so I can do more with the more general help that's needed. We all kind of help everybody and then have our areas on top of that.
Thank you. Angela, how about you?
Well, like Carla, my day-to-day varies depending on where we're at in the semester. So for example, in January, I gave an instructional session on how to conduct legislative histories for an undergraduate class that is actually studying and interning in Washington, D.C. this semester. And now that it's April, they're all emailing me for research consults now that their papers are due. So that's a mix of instruction is usually earlier in the semester. And then now I'm getting all of the requests for help now that those big papers are coming due. I also do reference. I am actually at the Dewey Graduate Library, which is a smaller library on our downtown campus. And we don't have an in-person reference desk that we staff all the time. Our in-person reference is just on an on-call basis. So if someone comes in and if their question isn't something the desk staff can handle, then they will contact one of us librarians here to come down and help. I also do chat reference shifts with Amanda and Melissa and the other librarians here. Let's see, I also do collection development. So a lot of that is just collaborating with faculty about building collections. So for instance, this year I got to work on a new international affairs collection. So that was really exciting. I worked really closely with faculty on the kinds of things they were looking for. I also have to work with faculty about, sometimes the budget restraints require that we cancel some things. So I have to really break that sad news to them. And we talk about where our limited funds can be better spent. Sorry, there's a lot of traffic noise in downtown today. Let's see, what else do I do? I also, there's a lot of service, there's a big service component to what I do. So I have committees and working groups in the library on the campus. And I'm also a section editor for the Journal of Librarianship and Scholarly Communication. And then scholarship is also an important component of my job, which is kind of where I have a lot more freedom there. I kind of get to decide what I research and publish about.
Thanks, Angela. And Melissa, how about you up in the archives?
Yeah, I think just like everyone else sort of said, it's juggling and never knowing what to predict is kind of the name of the game. We have our graduate students that we supervise. They sit primarily on our reference desk, but our offices are right behind there. So if someone walks in without an appointment to use materials, they'll come and get one of the archivists. So we're always on call for that kind of situation, but we usually request appointments to use materials in the department. That doesn't always happen. We're never going to turn anyone away. We're a public institution. We're open to everyone, and anyone can utilize our department and the materials that we have here. But we try to prepare for what the day is going to bring. So I'll have the materials that we know researchers are going to use that day. If there's any classes coming in, we utilize our conference room as our sort of offshoot research room for other researchers. So again, we're not denying anyone access to our materials. We supervise undergraduates on different projects. It could be data entry for work study students. It could be a smaller processing project. Arrangement and description. We do have some metadata work in a collection area that we're comfortable undergraduates and graduate students helping us work with. And then so that also we need to vet that afterwards. So it can be really anything. Instruction, we do that. It typically happened earlier in the semester, but now we have students who, even though we told them, write down the folder title and where the box and where it came from, they're now contacting us in the middle of April. I have this folder. I don't know what collection came out of. So there's lots of that sort of last minute helping students prepare for their finalizing their papers and things like that. So you never know.
So the next question is kind of a multi-part, and any one of you can answer because you might have different answers for this too. Are you professional staff or tenure track, or is like tenure required at your institution? So are you required to research and publish as part of that if you are tenure track? And do you absolutely need a second master's if you're doing anything subject related? So anyone who wants to jump in. Carla.
I can start. I have a faculty position here. We have teaching faculty and then non-teaching faculty, which includes librarians, counselors, student success staff, and a few other people. we are also unionized, the faculty. So one union has both teaching and non-teaching faculty. And then there's also adjunct faculty who are more part-time and they have their own union, actually. So I started off as an adjunct for a couple of years and then was hired as a full-time person. And we're not necessarily required to research and publish per se, but we're supposed to, do our job functions, professional development, and then service. And so that could include campus service. It could include service with professional organizations. Some people choose to research and publish, but it's not required as much as it might be in a different kind of library or institution. I used to work at the University of Minnesota in the Health Sciences Library, and there it was more of a formal expectation that you would have publications and be going to conferences and presenting and that kind of thing. So not necessarily required, but encouraged and encouraged to do other kinds of service here as well. As far as a second master's, I would say in my experience, not necessarily required. Some people here do have one. Our director has a second master's and one of the other librarians has a second master's, but it wasn't required to get her position. Had I stayed in a larger research institution, I probably would have gotten a second master's. And that's something that a lot of people can use scholarly or help from their institution to pay for a second degree. So I probably would have taken advantage of that. But here at a community college, I don't really feel it's necessary. It's good to have experience, I think, in the area that you're being the liaison to, but not necessarily required. I learned a lot on the job myself. I started off as a student employee, then I was a paraprofessional, and then became a professional librarian. So learned a lot kind of in each of those roles that translates into things I can use in my current position. Here where I am, there is a small monetary bump that you get if you do get a second master's or a PhD. And I think it could help some people with their promotion process, but not necessarily required. So I think it all depends on the kind of place you're at. But with that said, I will say you never know where you're going to end up, because I thought I was going to be a lifer where I was at the University of Minnesota. And then life took my family here from my husband's job, and never in a million years expected to work in a community college. So be prepared for anything, I guess, is the good way to go about it.
Just to compare notes on community colleges. So I am faculty. We're considered teaching faculty because of the instruction sessions that we do, even though we don't necessarily teach classes, although we are allowed to teach classes. I'm picking up a intro to being a college student section in the fall, which is exciting. But I don't believe it is a tenured position. So it is teaching faculty, and we do have promotional ranks, but we don't get formal tenure, I think. But we have the same, well, it's weird because we're teaching faculty, but we don't teach classes. So in our annual review packet, which I am working on now at the last possible second, we have to fill out the goals and reflections portion for the teaching faculty and also the non-teaching faculty staff. We have to fill out 2 review forms, because one is really heavily classroom focused, but is also kind of relevant to us. And the other one is really heavily professional development and collegiality focused, which is also us. So we're just kind of in this weird gray area, which is mostly fine. It doesn't actually affect our day-to-day very much. But we don't have to research or publish to be promoted. It's much, much more focused on participating in governance and working in both on campus and in organizational work groups and committees, things like that. We're expected to have memberships with SUNYLA and the CLRC, I believe. There are so many acronyms in this field. We're supposed to have several memberships with relevant library organizations and be active in those organizations. So most of us are going to the State University of New York Library Association conference in June, which will be exciting. So yeah, we participate in a bunch of different things, but don't necessarily publish all that much. As far as like personal education and stuff goes, we're not required to have a second master's. I have like 0.98 of a second master's because I was getting my English degree, my English master's, which super useful, guys. Love having done that. And then got most of the way through my thesis and the pandemic happened, and I coped by getting a library degree instead of finishing the first one. We'll get there. We'll get there at some point. It's great. And honestly, as far as the usefulness of a second master's goes in terms of like my day-to-day life, the content that I learned is almost entirely irrelevant, but the teaching experience that I got as part of my GA-ship in the master's has been absolutely indispensable. So I think if you're looking at things you want to do to boost your skills for being a liaison academic librarian, focus more on the skill itself that you're learning and not the piece of paper that comes for credentials. The best skill that I've picked up in terms of my liaison relationships is speaking artist. It's a very strange language. And as long as you understand what artists are trying to say, then you can be a good liaison to them. And I picked that up in high school when I was an art kid. So think laterally or in strange ways about the kinds of skills you can pick up and how you can collect them, and less about, oh, I have to get a second master's so they think I'm cool and employable.
Angela, I know you have a different experience than Melissa as well, so I'd love to hear from you guys too.
Yeah, so I'm considered academic faculty at the University of Albany, and we're responsible for, so we're tenure track, and so we have to kind of show accomplishment or excellence in for most academic faculty, it's teaching, scholarship, and service. Most of the librarians here we all do some form of instruction, I guess, or those of us who work on a public facing role do some kind of instruction. A few teach credit bearing courses. I do not. But instead of teaching, what we demonstrate is excellence or accomplishment in librarianship. And so we kind of show how all of the work that we do as librarians, so in my case, that would be the collection development, the reference instruction, which is mostly one-shots, and scholarly communications, how all of that translates into something comparable to what the teaching academic faculty understand as teaching. And I just went through the tenure process, and it just got signed off. So this is still pretty fresh in my mind. It sounds daunting, and in a way it is, but really if you tell yourself, I have met all of the clearly stated criteria and I'm going to be fine, it's just, there's just so much ceremony around it, and it just takes such a long time. What else can I say about teaching, or sorry, about academic status? Sorry, because Molly just talked about the master's degree and the education and what, it's kind of what I'm thinking about right now. I came from a law school, or my first professional librarian job was as a law librarian. And most law librarians have a JD, which I did not. And So that was a little unusual for me because I did teach a credit bearing class there. I think that a JD might have given me maybe a little more, a better understanding of like where the students were coming from, as opposed to just the research and the information literacy and, you know, that side of it. But I think now as a subject librarian with like a broader range of subjects, I don't think a JD necessarily would have helped me. That being said, it might have helped me with some of the scholarly communications responsibilities, like for instance, copyright in libraries and things like that that I think about. Also, like Molly, I have like 0.98 of another master's degree, which was in comparative literature and culture, and which is just as useful as an English master's degree, I think. And I was trying to do that master's degree while I got my MLIS, and it was too much. And I had to really just pick one to finish. And it came down to the MLIS because I could actually get a job with an MLIS. With a master's in comp lit, you basically have to go get a PhD in comp lit. And I was really not up for that. But that experience, you know, like Molly said, that the journey gave me some valuable experience, even if I don't use anything I learned about Spain in the Middle Ages in this job.
Maybe in another life, Angela.
Yeah, maybe.
And Melissa, what about you?
I have a very odd situation. So I am contingent faculty. I'm not really academic faculty or professional faculty, which we have both in the archives department here. And they all have hit second masters. Our professional faculty member just has a history degree. She does not have an archives degree, which is also different. But my budget line gets renewed every year. So, you know, if the stock market's not doing well that year and our endowment's not, you know, robust, I may not be renewed that year. So I kind of fall in between the academic cracks of really the world at SUNY Albany, but it has worked out sort of okay for now, with the hopes that at some point when the financial future is better than now, my position will be made permanent. There will be a permanent budget line, and I'll go through the entire search process again, and then that would lead to like Angela or Amanda's budget line, and then be a tenure faculty position. But right now, I'm a contingent faculty member, so I don't have rights to be a voting member of like a Senate, or I can't serve on certain committees. I have to be asked to be on a committee, typically a library committee. I do teach I adjunct for the library school at SUNY Albany. So I do teach a credit bearing class, one class in the fall semester. I also have a second job because I get very nervous about being a contingent faculty member and the uncertainness of that. So that's kind of where my budget line and where I live at SUNY Albany.
Thank you. It's good to have perspective, I think, from contingency, because it is so different and, you know, precarious at a lot of institutions. These next questions, I'm going to specify certain people just so we can get through them in the next, I don't know, 8 minutes before I open it up for a Q&A for our registrants. So this question is for Angela. And it is, how do you get to know your patrons in order to start collection development, especially in areas that are changing?
I think I started by just really going through the faculty listed on the Rockefeller College website, and I started looking at what kind of research they did. and I knew that, for instance, the international affairs collection that have been working on lately, I spoke with the head of that department, and kind of worked through him, you know, because all of the faculty there, it's the Rockefeller College of Public Affairs, Public Policy. So that covers political science, public administration, and public policy and international affairs. And so all of the faculty kind of teach a little bit in all of those areas. So we have the head of the international affairs faculty, but anybody else might teach a class and anyone else might have some interest. So I really just worked through him, and we kind of talked about maybe some monograph recommendations. When COVID happened at first, you know, and our budget took that first big hit and we had to cancel a lot of things in a hurry. A lot of international affairs content was lost simply because it's just a small department. It's not getting as much use as other things. And so kind of since then, I've been very conscious of when I do have the opportunity to actually subscribe to something it's going to have kind of yearly costs. I make a conscious effort to look for things that will kind of make up for some of that lost international content that we lost before. And so I really just do a lot of that. I start by looking at who's doing what research, who's teaching what classes, and then I really just go directly to them when I can. And I try to say yes as much as possible.
Yeah, budgets can be rough, and I think people don't realize how much that dictates what we can do in terms of the asks from faculty especially, but also our patrons who request random books all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. The almighty dollar really is in charge in a lot of ways.
It is. This next question is for Carla. What types of courses would you recommend to burgeoning collection development interested folks?
That's a good question. I would say I think it's important to have sort of a well-rounded library school experience, and I kind of focused on public services. I did take a cataloging course and some other things like that. If you do have an area that you're interested in, like I did take all the medical librarianship classes that my school offered. But I would say that some of those things you wouldn't normally think about, anything you can take related to teaching, any experience you can get related to teaching, because I feel most academic library jobs, in some way, you're going to be doing some kind of teaching or presenting, or I also took like a marketing class. I thought that was really helpful. And especially if you end up in a small place where you're doing a little bit of everything, it just helps to have, some of that in your back pocket. So anything you can do with teaching, I think is good. Some librarians I know have a second master's in teaching or education kind of topics. So, depending on where you want to end up, but definitely teaching classes, and then anything in what you think is going to be your subject area interest. But again, you never know where you're going to end up. So you might need to kind of fill in with some professional development in certain areas, work with mentors if you can. I was fortunate enough to have a lot of really good mentors. Several of them were retired nurses. So that just kind of, helped me figure out where I wanted to go and what I wanted to do, but take advantage of all those kind of opportunities that you can.
Thank you. This next question is for Molly. For your position, was it entry level? And if it wasn't, that's fine. But what was the hiring process like for you?
Yeah, so this is an interesting question for me because this is my first position out of library school. So it was entry level in the sense that they knew very much that I'm baby and would need to learn how to do things. So it's been really incredible the amount of support that I've had going into this, just learning how to be librarian and work with budgets and network with people and figure out how messed up Alma is in the background and solve all of those little problems. I would say the most important skills that I've taken out of library school are snooping and poking a bunch of button to see what happens. So um, yes, they knew that I was going to be really green coming in. And I didn't have to hide that. You'll see as you start looking for jobs, many places say, oh, we want 10 years of experience and a PhD in this and whatever. But a lot of places are actively looking for fresh librarians because they want new perspectives. They want new brainstorming to go on to sort of liven up the place a little bit, especially if a lot of the other librarians already in the department have been there for a decade or two, you know? So being green around the gills is not necessarily a bad thing when you are looking for a position right out of school. Just be careful how you market it and make sure that you and the prospective employer both sort of know what you're getting into.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. Always like read the job descriptions very carefully before you apply. Make sure that you fit that before you don't want to waste anyone's time. You don't want to waste your own too. This one is for Melissa, and then we'll open it up for Q&A from the audience. This is, I feel like, a very specific archives question. Where is it? How do you decide what type of archive special collection repository you would like to specialize in? Do you take whatever job seems interesting, or do you specialize in something?
I guess that would, I don't know, I never approached job hunting in that manner. It was always more like location or where I was in life, not what the repository's active collecting areas were. I stumbled into working with the death penalty and capital punishment in the United States because that's a primary focus in an active collecting area that we have here. But I started working in archives with labor unions. So I was actually hired by a labor union as an intern in undergraduate to help a labor union in New York work on their collection and have that ready to be transferred to a repository. So I never really thought about, but we do have, if you're more focused on, rare books cataloging, and then you want to work at the Beinecke, that, that would be your dream. So, you might want to look for, a step down, put like a position that's that will help you maybe level up so that if a position came open as a rare books cataloger at the Beinecke Library, that you were prepared for that. So maybe working with smaller collecting areas, but that also mimic your larger kind of goal in mind. That might be a way to prepare yourself and help your skill set develop.
All right. So this is when I open it up to our guests for questions. You can either pop a question down in the chat, or you can use the raise hand feature and unmute yourself. Do not be shy. I do have more questions for them if need be. All right, well, people might be considering their questions in the chat. All of you can answer this question. In what ways do you collaborate with faculty, staff, students, etc., to perform your job responsibilities? Whoever wants to go first.
Yeah, I can start us off. So by the nature of my job as the user experience librarian, I'm very plugged in to faculty and students. It's crazy. There's always like one or two students who just know everybody and are so plugged in. And this is a community college, so they're only here for 2 years. But once you like build a relationship with that one student that knows everybody, you're kind of like in. But meeting the especially the faculty on their level, because they're super busy doing faculty stuff, and so I like to use bait, um, in the sense that as I built my relationship with the art department, I started off by last summer we got rid of our entire physical periodicals, all of them. And I went through as we were doing that and hoarded a bunch of the cool ones. So I took a bunch of like National Geographic and Nature magazine and like mental health quarterly and whatever, stuff that had cool pictures and nice textured paper and interesting bindings and stuff. And then I told the art department, hey, I have these cool materials that you can cut up and destroy. And that has been a slow trickle of art professors and art students coming in to see what weirdness I have for them. And it's kept going throughout the whole year. So understanding the audience that you're trying to connect with and meeting them, speaking their language, is really important. Also, working on your outreach skills. So I hate marketing, sort of objectively. I hate it. It sucks. It just feels so capitalistic to me, but I'm getting better at it. That's one of the skills I've been working on. Canva is your best friend. Figuring out that if you do the send to all faculty email, if you put that in the blind copy line instead of the regular one, then they can't accidentally reply all. Hot tip. But yeah, it's just little outreach things where you're building relationships with people, and sort of being a chameleon on campus is really important, I think.
We have time if one more person wants to add to that.
I would love to add to that. I think word of mouth is huge, especially with the students, and that happens for me all the time, where someone will, a nursing student especially, will be like, my friend said I should come and talk to you, you know, and then they come back time after time for other things. And something that I really like about, especially working in a small place, is that I feel like everything we do informs other things that we do. So working at the reference desk, doing chat reference, you can get a real sense of what assignments students are working on, what kinds of materials they're looking for. And so that informs your collection development, which we're very curriculum focused. And we do have some, you know, leisure reading and that kind of thing. But most of what we have is meant to support assignments that students are working on. And I think that, you know, just the more you can be involved in kind of every part of what's going on campus. So not just talking to faculty, talking to new adjunct faculty, we have a group of nursing tutors, for example. So I spend a lot of time talking to them, you know, what are you seeing when students come in? Nobody understands APA citations. Okay, we need to work on that. So just, it's all kind of this nice interconnected circle where you learn more every day, kind of how can you do things better. And I do try to spend a lot of time evaluating, you know, what I've done or the library guides I have or the classes that I did to see how can I do this better to serve my people. So
Yeah. Okay, so we have one more question that came in, and it's gonna be from Melissa, but while she's answering that, I want you all to think about in one sentence, what is the advice that you would give to someone looking to become an academic librarian? But first, Melissa, Sophia asks, how many people are employed in the archives that you work at, not students, and how often do you write grants?
We are 5 full-time archivists in the department, which at some places is a lot. You could be a lone ranger, it could be just you. And some archives departments, they have multiple, they have like a whole department of just university archives or digital scholarship and digital archives. So we are like a mid-tier archives program. As for grants, it sort of depends on the level of grant. We apply for a New York State DHP Documentary Heritage Program grant every year, which is about like low five figures, I believe. And we do that one every year. There's national grants that take a lot more time and effort and departmental resources, but those are, a lot more money. Those are 6 figures, and those would be like multi-year grants. We collaborate mostly, but I would say the grant writing itself is mostly done by our department head as well. So it sort of depends on the scale of the grant, but there's ones we do every year. And then, we had a national grant from Council on Library Resources in 2017 that lasted through 2020. But that was, and as a project archivist, a lot more of my day went to working with that grant.
Thank you. I will say, being here at the U Albany, I feel like we're always hearing about archives getting those big grants, and it's always so exciting when we hear about it. So working at a university center archive, I think the opportunity for grants and working with large ones presents itself quite often. Okay, 1 sentence advice, Molly, go.
Get involved with governance on campus. If you have faculty caucus or Senate, even student government, so that you know what's going on campus and can react accordingly.
Agree with that, Carla.
I would say don't forget about the soft skills. So things that aren't necessarily, you're not going to learn in library school perhaps, but being flexible, multitasking, being approachable, being able to juggle things, making yourself available, and handling interruptions with grace. I think that's a good skill to have. So the solid librarianship skills are kind of a given, but don't forget about the soft skills as well.
Thank you. Angela.
Okay, mine might be a run-on sentence because I have 2 things I would like to recommend, and those are be able to at least converse or understand scholarly communications issues, because it's increasingly working its way into every aspect of academic librarianship, from publishing issues to copyright to transformative agreements, which is affecting the way we do collection development in a lot of ways, metadata, all kinds of things. So at least be conversant about that. Also learn to do just some basic legal research, because people will think you are a magician if you know how to do legal research. And I say that as a law librarian.
Thank you. Melissa.
I kind of like 2 things as well. I'd be a Swiss Army knife, and grad school is the time for it, but also you are paying an incredible amount of money to go to grad school, and you're probably going to be paying that much after grad school as well. So make it work for you. You are paying, you are the customer, whatever. This is the time to speak your mind if you're not getting what you want out of your graduate experience. And also, you're going to do everything, just work, get as much practical experience, because it's a practical job, as you can in grad school. People want to intern, they want people to work for free, but utilize that to the best of your capabilities in graduate school. It will help you land, I think, a professional position.
All right, thank you all. This is the end of the Collections Archives panel. In about 10 minutes, we'll have the Public Services panel from 10 to 10:45, and then come back at noon. We'll be networking with all of these lovely folks to be able to ask them more in-depth questions in breakout rooms in a more intimate space. So definitely come back for that. But yeah, 10 minutes and we'll start the next panel. And thank you all again for coming and sharing your experiences with us. All right, we're just about at 10 o'clock. So welcome back for our second panel of Future Librarians Day. I'm Amanda Lau. I'll be moderating this session. I moderated the first one too, back again, and I'll also be on this panel. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen so you can see us all. We're going to go around and just introduce ourselves, what institution we're at, and what we do for our job responsibilities. And I guess I'll start. So I'm Amanda, like I said, I'm Outreach and Marketing Librarian at UAlbany. And basically, I'm responsible for managing our social media accounts, putting on programming. I do our stress less programming here at UAlbany, so around finals, midterms, and various times during the semester. I also have library ambassadors. They're part of our peer-to-peer marketing. And I also am part of the reference department. So that's where I'm currently housed. So it's not a separate department that I'm part of. So I also do reference work. Chris?
Sure. Thanks. Thanks everyone for coming too. It's great to see everyone. My name is Chris Kretz. I am the head of academic engagement at Stony Brook University. I like the title because it means everything and nothing at the same time, but I oversee a lot of our instructions program, our workshops. We have a robust series of workshops we do every semester. Then different types of programming that we do, work with our resources in terms of learning objects, designing videos, tutorials, things like that, research guides, and also oversee a lot of our social media. I have a number of social media interns at the library that we have from semester to semester. So a little bit of everything in terms of making sure people are using the library for what they need to do.
Thank you. And Erin?
Hi, I'm Erin Wilburn. I'm the Access Services Librarian at SUNY Broome Community College. And my primary job is circulation desk oriented, staffing with student workers and clerks. So I'm the supervisor there, handling policies and procedures. And I'm watching my student workers walking around looking lost right now. So also cover some reference hours. I do some instruction. I'm a liaison to physical therapy, phys ed, psychology and human services, and one or two other folks. I also tend to track down textbooks because we have a textbook reserve collection, do some displays and marketing pieces, a little bit of everything.
I feel like that's a lot with us, the public services library. And we'll get to those questions. And Mary Jo, if you're ready, I know you just joined us. If you want to just introduce yourself.
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. I'm here. I'm still working on a video, but I'll get there. I'm the Scholarly Communications Librarian at SUNY Brockport. And I've been doing this since about 2017. It's a combination of things under the scholarly communications umbrella, which includes reference and instruction, as well as open access, open educational resources, and also working with our institutional repository and some of our archives kinds of things. So it's a combination kind of positions. It's a faculty position. I'm a full rank librarian, very fortunate in that regard, and love what I'm doing. Every day is something new.
Thank you. All right, so we'll get into our questions, and this will be everyone at first, so we'll go kind of round robin. What does your day-to-day look like, and what about your day makes you happy? And Chris, we'll start with you.
Okay, great. I have another screen. I'm sure I would guess we all have a second screen open because we have a lot of things that we have to do during the day. So I'm looking at my calendar that kind of helped me formulate this answer. I mean, there's some routine things. So during the semesters, we're kind of coming to the end of instruction, but I usually have, 2 to 3 instruction sessions depending on the time of the semester. So that's, 50 to an hour and 20 minute. We go to a lab or a classroom where we're teaching different subject matters. A lot of committee work that might come up a lot if you're talking to academic librarians. So I'm on our Diversity and Equity Committee, we're planning some big events for the fall, so that's a routine meeting date. We have some service to the university, so some university committees, student life and curriculum committee for the School of Professional Development that I am a liaison to. So there's a routine of committee meetings that are always coming up. I oversee those interns, so that's a constant. Every week I have a meeting with them, and then I'm overseeing their work as they are posting things online. We don't have a reference desk. We finally moved off the physical reference desk, but we are all covering chat. So there's a number of hours a day I'll have chat on. The amount of traffic on it varies, so it's usually something that's on in the background. And if you hear the ding go off, you have to jump in and see what the chat question is. And then when there's time, we'll get to this question separately, I think, but my own research and writing is something I have to make sure I leave time for. If not week to week, at least different times of year I can concentrate on that. So that's a smorgasbord of things, but I would say if I were to boil it down, instruction, reference, and then all these different work groups and committee meetings is sort of the staple of my day.
That sounds about right. Erin.
Well, I'm just trying to, again, like Chris, I'm looking at my calendar here. Again, yes, I've got instruction and reference responsibilities and committee meetings. What has been occupying a lot of my time lately is documentation, because we've discovered we don't have much. And the other thing about my position is I started in the fall of 2019, and then COVID happened. So there were a lot of institutional knowledge that got lost because of retirement, and then it was kind of like walking back into a new place, which has been both good and bad. But with especially working at a smaller place like this, which I'm not sure about. I know Chris and Mary Jo are both at bigger institutions, four-year schools, and so is Amanda. So unlike your last committee where you had a bunch of community college people, now I'm the only one. But there's a whole lot of overlap, and we've been doing a lot of work to figure out, who's doing what, when, and why. One thing, I'm kind of a statistics and data-driven person, and I've found that when everybody is doing everything, nothing gets done. So it's figuring out how to make sure that everything is working properly. And I'm, like I said, if I can find data and look at whole upper level, big picture, what's going on over here and over there, that's what I like. And to kind of wrap that back to public services, I always think of that kind of like if you're in the department store and you have something you want to pay for, and you're walking around to all those little kiosks that are supposed to have cashiers at them and they don't. It's the most annoying thing in the world. So I'm really big on keeping my service points staffed and people where they need to be at the right times. So that's what I spend a lot of time doing.
Thanks, Erin. And Mary Jo?
Well, this morning I'm at UB for a misinformation and social media conference sponsored by the Center for Information Integrity. So I'm doing things in the library. I'm doing things off campus. A lot of the things have already been mentioned in terms of reference and instruction. The things that I would add to it, and certainly yes, meetings. I'm chair of a communications team on our library right now. We've got search committees that are going on because we've had a lot of turnover in the library. There's always things related to the college governance that are impact all of us. So we're trying to keep an eye and ear to the ground in terms of, well, this year it's been the gen ed kinds of issues and other kinds of things. I'm on our appointments, promotions, and tenure committee. There's all kinds of opportunities and discussions there. But in terms of public services, again, primarily the reference desk, and as was mentioned, I usually do leave that, listen for the ping to jump in when I can, and doing consultations. I've been doing more research consultations with individual students rather than, I'm not teaching whole classes or teaching even one-shot classes in that same regard as some of my colleagues are doing in public services. So it's varied, it's interesting, it keeps me on my toes. Certainly as much as I can be an advocate and getting out on campus to talk about open access, open educational resources, trying very hard to build those relationships, build those connections back to the library. This year, we're especially focused on trying to re-engage people back in the library after the pandemic, because, you know, so many students for a year and 2 years of cohorts, students have not really used the library in quite the same way, physical space, as they may have otherwise, and may or may not have used us, the online presence, in as much as they might have otherwise just built those kind of connections to coming to see us. So trying to get back on track with that, reaching out to student groups as much as we can is, trying to re-engage and reinforce that connection. So those are some of the things that keep me going.
Thanks, Mary Jo. And I'll say it's very much the same for me, especially coming back from COVID. It's rebuilding those relationships. And that's been huge for the past 2 years for me doing outreach and marketing. So my day-to-day varies. I really don't do instruction, but I do research consultations when they come through. I mainly am coming up with stuff to put on our social media channels. We have very robust social media presence on Instagram and on Twitter. We do have a Facebook, and we have some other things. We have a Spotify and other accounts that I try to build a different kind of relationship with students. So not that academic sense, but that student-centered, come to the libraries, we're friendly here, to get over that library anxiety. That also goes hand in hand with a lot of the programming that I do. It's really, my programming is my big joy. This makes me happy, especially when I get to bring in therapy dogs, or see students that are really stressed in the libraries, and well, what can we do to encourage healthy study breaks, that kind of thing. So that takes up a lot of my time. In terms of reference, as I am in the reference department, we have a physical reference desk that we do staff, though, as Mary Jo kind of mentioned, we're not seeing a lot of people come up for these transactions since COVID happened. So our numbers are kind of down, but we do have chat reference, and the pings are always going off for that. We'll listen for it. Everyone in our library is responsible. Every librarian is responsible for doing reference. So it's more than just my department. It's all librarians take part in that. So there's a lot, and the committee work, as others have said, there's a lot of that as well. Right now, I think I'm one of my dean's favorite people, because I feel like I keep on getting asked to do more things, and usually it comes to making these connections with other offices around campus. For what can we do to help our students' academic success, and bringing those offices into the libraries to coordinate things with us. So that's kind of what I do, which leads into the next question I have for everybody. So we hear other responsibilities or other duties as assigned, and I think you see anyone that works in public services, we're running around the chicken with head cut off, because we have so many things that we're doing at any given time, and some of it comes from this. So what other roles or tasks have you taken on that do not directly relate to your job title, and were these responsibilities tangentially related to your actual job description? And Erin, we're going to start with you.
Well, I've been kind of lucky in that I have been given the freedom to do what I'm interested in, and those things have fallen into the other duties as assigned. So I like doing displays and finding ways to make things look different around the building without putting a whole lot of money into it, because we don't have a lot of that. So yeah, that's one of those things I've ended up doing. I think all of us have probably ended up doing various levels of tech support that we are in no way certified to do. The number of printers I have disassembled and put back together and unjammed with little bits of paper. And in fact, I think in one of my interview questions here, I was asked to describe something new I had learned, and I told them about taking apart and cleaning a Keurig coffee maker, because that was something I had done at my other job in the break room because nobody could get coffee. So I fixed the coffee maker. But yeah, there's a lot of, if anyone was in the earlier session and heard, I think it was Molly say a willingness to poke buttons and see what happens. I've done a lot of that in a lot of places, and I've, cleaned up coffee spills and helped move furniture and done all kinds of things that I really never thought I'd be doing.
I hear that. I hear that. Especially the moving furniture.
And you have to be careful if you've got like maintenance union issues about what you do and how.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Chris, how about you?
Along the same lines of tech support, but I would say more specifically media technology support. So if people learn that you know how to edit video, or we get a new program, like we were transcribing oral histories, and we were subscribed to this product called Descript, and I wound up using it more than most. So I was creating the tutorials for it and doing the workshops on how to use it. And it kind of gets absorbed into the social media work anyway. So it's good to learn these skills. But you need those people that are willing. It's the same way as taking part of Keurig, someone that wants to go learn how to create a transition on a video and that you're going to upload to YouTube, or camera angles and thinking about lighting and things like that. So we become media producers by default somehow.
I agree with that too. Mary Jo?
Yep, I would echo everything that people have already said. Tech support, certainly. Pushing buttons, absolutely. Moving furniture, yes. The other things that I would add are, I am we do have a student that I'm supervising in the archives, and that's been a joy. She's just been wonderful to see her progress and learn things that she wouldn't have known otherwise. I'm the chair of our Friends of the Library group, so that keeps me busy with at least a meeting a month, and trying to help them help reimagine what the library could be, how they can best support us. So you were talking about a Keurig. In my case, it was researching a microwave oven that the Friends could purchase for our public facing part of the library, so the students could warm up a cup of coffee if they wanted. And trying to think through some of what those new ways of reaching students are, especially in terms of programming, certainly displays, a whole host of things that I've worked with colleagues on, but been kind of interesting to think through, or think how the library can partner with other departments or other places we haven't reached to before. I'm a mentor for one of our students in another avenue through there's a women's leadership group on campus that I'm trying to be re-engaged with. So there's all kinds of things you do that I wind up doing outside of my normal responsibilities, some of them by choice. I'm very fortunate that I do get to have some choice that maybe more than others do, but it's been awesome to kind of find a path that works for me.
And yeah, I'll have to agree with everybody to a lot of those things. And for me, since my title is marketing and outreach, I feel like everyone's like, well, that sounds like an outreach thing. That sounds like a marketing thing. So I get a lot of things like brought to me that may or may not fit into what I do. So I just have to be cognizant of that and kind of manage the workload creep that seems to fall upon me. And I think it falls upon a lot of us. All right, so the next question is always a big one. It's a multi-part question and everybody can answer. Are you tenure track? And if so, what does that process look like? If not, what's the process for permanency? And is writing and publishing a requirement for you? So whoever wants to start with this one.
I can start. I think yes, and yes. I have some backstory. So I was for 16 years I was tenured at another institution. And if you're ever wondering if colleges ever go out of business, the answer is yes. So I had a college get shot out from under me. So I'd gone through the process once. So I'm at Stony Brook. I am tenure track. I am in my 6th year. There was actually a COVID extension that they offered. So I'm presently up for tenure now. So I'm awaiting, it's in the pipeline. Everything's in the pipeline. There's 6 criteria that we have to meet or show evidence that we're meeting in terms of getting tenure. And they range, I mean, scholarship is one of them. it's a little fuzzy, and I'd be interested to hear from the rest of you of what can be documented as scholarly work. So there was a hard and fast, a lot of places are trying to get away from saying there's a hard and fast number of 3 publications, 4 publications. So I do have publications, but I also do a lot of oral history work. So I have a couple of oral history projects, and in the old days, I think it's not as strict now, but in the old days, some people might say if that's not a peer-reviewed print publication, it doesn't count. So I think what counts as scholarship, it has expanded to I think to the benefit of everyone. But there is at Stony Brook and SUNY-wide a commitment and a requirement that you're showing scholarly ability. Peer reviewed is the most obvious way to show it, but if you're in the arts and you're doing, I've heard of people doing curating exhibits and putting that in their tenure packet, and artistic works and even dance recitals. So what will count varies, but there's always, I would think, for an academic librarian tenure track, some component of scholarly work. And then the rest of it is ability as a librarian. So whatever your job description is, you have to show that you're progressing, professional development, that you're going to conferences, presenting, taking part in organizations, university service, so serving on these outside committees, doing work outside of the library. And then we have a unique one. I think every SUNY can develop some specialized ones. So we have a criteria for enriching the life of the university by correcting discrimination. So that's a lot of the DEI work I do. And so that's another criteria that we have to meet. So it should be pretty clearly laid out. So wherever you start, make sure it's explained to you in a way that you understand and that you have the documentation and all the timelines. It's manageable. It's stressful, obviously, but it can be done if you sort of keep an eye on the goals and what levers you may need to push at different points in your career as you're moving through the process.
Anyone else want to jump in on that? Erin?
I can, sure. So again, I'm probably the odd man out here. This is actually my first job, and it's my third job in my career. This is the first one that has offered either faculty status or tenure track. My first job was at a 4-year private school out of New York State, and my second position was at another community college in New York State, that the librarians are not faculty, are not union, and are not tenured. So this was my first experience with this. I was, relatively older than most of the folks who've gone through the process. And ours is relatively, for me, it hasn't been stressful, because things like creating LibGuides, subject guides, things like that are considered academic work. So if I've done a couple classes, that goes into my academic work file. There's a lot of blur because I'm non-instructional faculty between the professional activities and the academic activities. And sometimes it's really up to me which folder I put things in. It's like, well, this folder looks empty, so I'll put it in there. But, I can document all the emails I send to faculty about their course textbooks in the fall, and they respond and say, thank you. That goes into my professional, outreach activities. So that's kind of nice. I'm guessing eventually we're going to get around to the second master's question with this group too. I do not have a second master's, and I don't need it for the job. However, if I were to continue, because I'm faculty, I go from, assistant to associate to full, I think. I do need additional education credits beyond my master's, my library science master's, and I have part of those, but I don't have a second master's in full. They do allow for here, you can get exemptions and use professional development classes as evidence of learning. So I'm actually doing the library management class through CPD to fill part of that. So so I can have tenure, but there is no publication or anything required. Obviously, conference presentations and things like that are, good. Even, being here for this is good. And SUNYLA, for anybody who's thinking about going to a SUNY library, SUNYLA gives you great opportunities to present on just about anything you've done with very low stress and lots of support. So.
Thank you. Mary Jo?
Okay, my turn. I love hearing everybody's librarians' backstories. I think that's always so interesting, and we all bring something different to the table. My story is a little different in that I started out at Brockport on a professional line. I was the director of academic computing services for over a dozen years. And after that, I moved over to the library. I earned a degree online from Syracuse and moved over to the library and was the director of the library for 12 years as well. Since then, I've stepped back from that and am now doing this new scholarly communications role, which again is it's brought me a lot of interest and joy, frankly, without quite as much stress as the director position. Along the way, I was able to rise through the ranks. I came up, moved from the professional line, UUP, to the faculty tenure line. I did move up and earned the full librarian rank in 2018. And it's been, in terms of second masters, I came to the library, I came to college with a PhD. So I do have a second master's and a doctorate, and then I earned the MLS, came in through that way. So it's been a lifelong learning journey for me. And so I've just appreciated all of the privilege, frankly, that it's afforded. What I would tell new folks is that in terms of going through the tenure process, I agree with Chris that I believe I have seen over my time, I don't know if it's a rethinking, a reshaping of some of the tenure, some of the quite the strict tenure kinds of issues that we might have had in the past. Yes, we do have to show librarianship, scholarship, and service. But the librarianship can be shown in all kinds of a much greater variety of ways than strictly only through peer-reviewed. That is still, of course, the gold standards, peer-reviewed journals, but there are so many other avenues and forms of scholarship that I have seen people, and I am just delighted that people are thinking about some of these other ways of connecting with communities and showing our impact, demonstrating it. You don't have to, I would just tell anyone, you don't have to walk on water in order to get, it can be done. Keep up with your documentation, make sure you document every single year what your activities are. That's the main thing. And if you have built that, it should progress normally. If you're talking to your supervisor along the way, it should be not a huge stress. I know people still do get so worked up about it, but I think it would help everybody if we could just tell everybody, just tone it down just a notch. You will get through it. It's going to be okay. People are cheering for you. We want to support you. We want you to, we need new librarians in the ranks coming up, and you're going to be awesome and you're going to be great. And if you just stay aligned with your library mission, your campus mission, and so on, you're going to do, I think you'll be fine. People mentioned SUNYLA. I agree with that. That's a very low stress, supportive kind of group in terms of a place to do presentation. So I think that's a great one. Okay, I'm going to be, and don't look for other opportunities outside of that, because there are some such interesting new ways for librarians to make an impact, to show impact outside of traditional library channels as well. So there I am.
Thank you, Mary Jo. My story quickly, I also started in a professional line right out of library school. I graduated in 2014 with my degree. It took me 5 months to find a job. It was an overnight position at UAlbany. So I was working until 3:15 a.m. I always say, get your foot in the door wherever you can, especially right out of library school. Experience is experience. Make sure it's paid though, preferably. Don't work for free if you can, if you really need the income, don't work for free. So I actually did that. And then I moved into another professional line in access services. And then finally, playing the long game, they created a position for me that was an academic line, and I stepped into that. and I recently secured tenure in January, so I am freshly tenured, and it is very stressful, as Mary Jo said. It's as stressful as you make it, but along the way, I had people telling me, like, look, Amanda, we're not going to put you up for tenure if you're not going to get it. So like, we're going to be very clear with you that, you know, where you stand. So I like that people are very open and honest with the process, and we're very helpful. Here at UAlbany, it is you're looked at excellence in librarianship, scholarship, and service. For us, you are required to write 2 peer-reviewed articles as your scholarship. You have to have those, or you're not going to get tenure and continuing appointment. So that's kind of a downer. I wish we were more open here about what is the requirement is. Of course, we look at the conference presentations and all that stuff, but without those 2 articles, like, you're kind of dead in the water. But you know, writing those articles, it does go fast if you start early. I mean, you have, I think, five years to get those done. So definitely start early if you're writing, and write often, write every day if you can, like, put time aside to make sure that you're doing that. It's very common in the library land to write with a colleague. So write with somebody else, especially if you need someone to motivate you, split the work and get it done. Especially if you have other junior faculty with you, go ahead and do that. And I did that, and I found it was very motivating and helped me get my writing done. Because I always tell people, even though I'm tenure track, writing really isn't my bag. I like writing like short, like, you know, opinion pieces and stuff like that on librarianship. I'm a librarian first, a researcher and writer second. So personal research and stuff aside. So you keep that in mind when you're looking at positions, what the requirements are for tenure, especially if you're someone who doesn't like to write in library literature. I mean, now that I'm tenured, I can write about whatever I want in terms of libraries, which is very freeing. So just keep that in mind when you're looking at things. Okay, next question. Since we have about 5-ish minutes before I'm going to open things up to questions from the audience, I'm going to point these questions to each one of you, and then so we can get through them. So first, I'm going to ask Erin, how do you adapt the services you provide to ensure you are effectively serving the needs of diverse populations?
Wow. I'm thinking about this, and I mean, I come at this from a customer service standpoint. So basically, it's a treat everyone as you would like to be treated. And unfortunately, I don't have the most diverse student population. So I don't want to say it's a non-issue, because it is an issue. But I do the training for my student workers and my clerks, and it is, know your job, communicate our policies. If you have questions, call your supervisors. And we've not gotten any complaints or issues around diversity. I do try to make sure I have a stable of student workers that reflects my student population as well. But because I am limited to students that have federal work study, and then the students who apply for the jobs, I find that I think I have 6 student workers and 5 of them are female. And to me, that's a diversity issue right there. It's like, why don't I have more dudes? But they're not the ones who want to work in the library. So it's an issue of self-selection. And the one thing I am doing right now is I actually nominated a couple of my student workers for some student recognition awards that is run through Student Life, in hopes of saying, basically marketing my positions a little more broadly and making it more of a visibility issue to make it more appealing to everyone to apply. So that's where I'm sitting with the diversity issues. So I don't know if that's the answer we're looking for, but that's as close as I can come right now.
I think that's an interesting perspective coming from a smaller school too, is because I think the diversity aspect and a lot of smaller schools, depending on where they are, like they might not have as diverse populations. So like, what do you how do you integrate
Right.
like that to make it more of a forefront kind of thing? So yeah, I think
Right.
yeah.
And a lot of our diversity kind of goes like, it never comes up. Like I can see sitting out in my reference area right now, I have 2 young women wearing hijabs. There are 2 children out there who are definitely not my students because they're under the age of 10. So, you know, but they seem to be happily working and getting the help they need. So I don't want to say it's a non-issue, but it's something that it just gets dealt with as it comes. So
No, that answers the question. All right, so the next question I had is for Chris. What aspects of your profession do you wish you could draw more attention to?
I would say the creativity. I'm a big proponent of librarians and libraries as sources of creative content and programming. And, you know, if anyone knows their public library, they're even probably ahead of academic libraries. But I would say, you know, and if you're a creative person, this is a good field to come into because you can adapt a lot of ideas. You do get a lot of freedom. One of the best things we bought in the last year were wireless microphones for our iPhones, and we're doing a lot of social media, just going around interviewing people on campus and coming up with questions and, you know, thematic ideas to do. So I would like more people to see librarians and the library field as a creative outlet within the mission of everything else that we do.
I completely agree. Mary Jo, this next question is for you. What are ways librarians provide public resources that are not necessarily known?
Okay, so that's an interesting one. Again, I think there's probably a lot of outreach that isn't actually, you know, people may not actually realize they're doing it or may not come out that way. And again, it's in terms of connection building and relationship building overall. You know, there are public services that we're doing this year. For example, one thing we did is building off the diversity answers. We put a prayer space in the library for Ramadan, for the month of Ramadan. Just for that space, we took one of our more unused rooms and dedicated it and made some, you know, public announcements about it. I don't think it's been incredibly used, but the point is we're trying to build some visibility that we're a welcoming space for all. And I think that it's been a step in the right direction. We've done some displays as well. Of course, we connect with the diversity conference. We did a wonderful kind of thing in combination with them last year where they put up a whole exhibit related to Civil War and so on, and diversity issues related to that. I think other public services kinds of things that we do that people may not be aware of is again connecting with the larger community. So I don't know, an example that we're doing, our friends group is doing a paint and sip event in May, which is like, it won't be sip, but it'll just be a painting party outside the library to build some friends for the library. And that's something I don't think most people may not have considered that at other times. There's all kinds of things that go on that you never really think of in terms of public services that we do sponsor student awards, library for our library student workers, and have an awards luncheon for them. And I think building community with our student workers is something that does take time and is maybe an unheralded or people don't realize how much goes into that, but it's very worthwhile, very rewarding for us.
I agree. So I'm going to open it up to questions from the audience. So feel free to either raise your hand using the raise hand feature if you want to verbalize it or throw in the chat. I see we already have one chat question from Stephanie, and this is for everyone, so anyone can jump in. How do you mirror your face-to-face service with your online faculty and students? Which is a great question because I feel like this is something I know we struggle with.
And well, I'll start off with, so from my perspective, especially with COVID, it started with the textbook reserve collection. First of all, we used that our outreach, our reference and instruction librarian, sorry. He's also our OER lead for online educational resources. So he took that opportunity to reach out and really market those services too. But we did set up Alma and Iliad and the DocDel service in Iliad to provide scanned chapters of textbook reserves. Shh, don't tell. But we were doing our best to meet the needs of the students who either weren't on campus at that time, and going forward they've been teaching some remote classes still. And we have some high flex and online classes where the faculty say, contact the library and they'll get you your books, which is kind of true, but kind of not. But we do our best to, provide scanned and emailed chapters to them. I think we've all mentioned the chat reference services too, and providing the best. Again, this gets back to my love of documentation. I will do my best to describe every, click here, enter this, then click on this thing kind of pathfinder for students that I can't sit down with and walk through a search kind of thing.
Anyone else?
This is Mary Jo. We were able to, we took some doing and took some nudging, but we were able to get a librarian component in Brightspace opened up for us, or at least included, so that we can have librarian services more prominently noted in the learning platform. I think in addition, one of the interesting things about COVID is that it did allow our faculty, our librarians, to do more online instruction. And it hasn't taken off gangbusters, but I think it's given us an opportunity to rethink how we do that, how we offer that opportunity for online classes, and connect with their online faculty in ways that we may not have otherwise. The other thing that we do is that we're connected very closely with our IT department is in the library, frankly. And so when they're doing things like captioning and so on, as much as we can piggyback or learn from them or understand how they're doing things and doing the Camtasia and all those kinds of services, I think that's another way that we're trying to mirror that online, the face-to-face and online, to build in some equity there.
Yeah, and I would just add that we saw the surge of online with COVID, which that's subsided, but what stayed is we do have a certain percentage we do a lot of asynchronous things now. So we'll get a request and we'll record a lesson or create a video tutorial and put that online. So we've added that sort of to our toolkit, that we, as an option, instead of just saying do a live synchronous session, we'll develop things with the faculty for online classes that they can use at a later date. So
I know for us, prior to COVID even starting, one of my very first articles was about piloting a chat or a research consultation service online to hit our online population. So we were ahead of the curve. It's like almost we predicted that this COVID thing was going to happen. So we now do online research consultations on Zoom for students, and that's been very beneficial to just anyone really, not just our online students, but if you just don't feel like walking to the library for an in-person consultation. Of course, our chat service has been very beneficial to those online. We also will send books if you are within a 50-mile radius. We will send books out, and of course articles get scanned, and that's something we provide to everyone. Our workshops are now pretty much all online. We offer them all online. Before they were in-person workshops, and we found that we get more attendance when they're online. So I think it's been, again, beneficial to everyone, not just our online students. And we also try to provide more ebooks, and I think that was just again byproduct of COVID. But if we can provide an ebook, we will try to do that. So you'll see we have a lot more available content online. Stephanie did want to make a little bit more expand more onto her question. So she asked, do you feel that your public service support is the same, better, or less for online students? For example, students and faculty will never enter your brick and mortar library. And she says, again, to expand her question.
And I think the I don't know if it's a legal equivalent, but the language, we usually say it's equivalent. So it's never going to be exactly the same, right? Because physically you can do, it's definitely a different modality or experience. And I don't do all our public service, so if I'm interpreting that as instruction and research and consultation. So I would say it is on par with, we are meeting the needs. I'd be curious because I'm thinking now that maybe a lot of our the people attending this meeting are in online programs. So I'd be curious how they would rate the service they're getting. But I would say we strive to make it equivalent to the in-person people.
Yeah.
This is Mary Jo. I would agree with that. We have to be at least as good as, and to be real honest, I think it's more that we've enhanced the skills that we've had previously. So I think librarians are, as all of our worlds are shifting, librarians' work world are as well. And we need to be able to have that opportunity to meet students where they are. Is it working from their perspective? I think that's where the jury is still out, and that's why you're right. I'd like to hear from anyone on the call in terms of is it as good as or not as going into brick and mortar.
And this is Erin. I'll just add from our side, it often feels like it's making connections and marketing and outreach with the faculty first. And sometimes we can reach out over and over again, offering anything they want and are met with crickets. So, and that's, every situation is different. So obviously, like, we still have free printing here on campus, and I can't offer that to you at home, but I can show you how to save your document as a PDF and email it to your faculty member if that's what you need. So
yeah. And I wish we would have got to the question about outreach to faculty, staff, and students. But yeah, Erin, I agree. It really comes down to sometimes faculty being like, hey, did you know the libraries have these services? Because your faculty, your professors are your first line of communication to you in your classes. So they should really be making people aware of these resources that they have available, or bringing us in to be like, hey, did you know we have this? Because a lot of times we will only interact with people to say, hey, we have this via our social media or website, or if we're tabling in person at places. So faculty really need to help us out to get the word out about what we provide. All right, last question before I end the session. In less than 2 sentences, what is your best advice to people looking to enter academic librarianship? And Chris, we'll start with you.
I would say be proactive, ask questions, be curious. One of the weird things I find engaging that I never thought I would be is interviewing people. So I'm always fascinated when we have to interview people. And so I would say, come with questions of your own and make sure you're doing your due diligence, research your institutions, because I think I personally appreciate interacting with people actively, right? So you're asking as much of the place you want to work as they're asking of you. So don't be afraid to get across what you need to know too.
Erin.
Well, so I started out as a systems librarian. Actually, no, I started out as a technical services copy cataloger, then became a systems librarian, then ended up working as almost a solo librarian, and am now public services. Just keep learning lots and lots of things, and don't think that you're going to end up in the place that you thought you wanted to be. I guess, because first of all, I never thought I wanted to be a cataloger in the first place, but that's what the job was. And I found the right connections. And that's the other thing I think, Chris was saying, make the connections, even the weird ones that you don't think are going to matter. I volunteered at the community theater. I was wearing my college sweatshirt, and this woman goes, "Oh, do you work there?" And I went, "Yes, you're an English professor," because I'd seen her face in a Zoom call. And I think I freaked her out a little bit. But, when you can do things like that and, kind of work in all different atmospheres, it definitely benefits both you and your students and your institution.
And Mary Jo.
Yep, this is Mary Jo. I'd jump in and just say, I love the stay curious one. I also like be a good listener. Really ask the good questions. Don't be afraid to ask about not just the standard questions, but what the library culture is like, what the workday is like, you know, what you can expect, especially these days about unpaid labor, you know, or just listen to about for any of those kind of watchwords. We do want to make sure that you know, we're recognized in ways that make sense, that actually that count, and that will make our lives give our lives joy and sustenance. Again, just there are people out there who are wishing the best for you.
Thank you. And I guess I would just reiterate what I said earlier about experience is experience. It can be really hard to break into the field sometimes just because there are so many people that are studying to be librarians. So if you're seeing something that's a foot in the door someplace, play the long game if you can, and just get in somewhere and get that experience, because any experience is good experience. Thank you all so much for being part of the public services panel. Tech services systems to start at 11, so in 10 minutes. At 12, everyone will be back for a breakout lunch if you want to talk more with these lovely folks and hear more about their experiences in academic librarianship. So hang tight, and thank you all again.
Thanks, everyone.
All right, folks, it's just about 11, and we're getting ready to start our third panel of Future Librarians Day, the Tech Services and Systems panel. This will be the first one I am not moderating, which is pretty good because I know next to nothing about tech services and systems and what these folks actually do, because it's magic. So I'm going to turn things over to our moderator for this session, Betsy, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Betsy Tucker. I'm the Acquisitions and Collections Management Assistant at SUNY, and I'll be moderating this panel. So we're going to start with introductions. If each presenter could share name, job title, where you work, and where you completed your library degree. And a brief description of your job, but we will get into that more throughout the session.
I'll start. My name is April Earle. I am the head of technical services at Greenlee Library, which is at Farmingdale State College. I'm sort of head of technical services by default. About 6 years ago, we had a giant retirement and a lot of shifting in the library, and I was the only technical services librarian, and thus I am now head of technical services. I went to St. John's University, go Red Storm. I also worked there, got my library science degree through tuition remission. And to even briefly describe my responsibilities would take a tremendous amount of time. We are an institution of 10,000 students. We have 7 librarians. We do everything. So I can talk more to what it is I do as we go through our questions. Thanks.
I'm happy to go next. I'm Jill Locascio, and I am the Systems and Digital and Technical Services Librarian at the SUNY College of Optometry, which is in Manhattan. And we're a very small institution. We probably have something like 400 students. Obviously, optometry is very specialized as well. So I wear a lot of hats. We have 5 staff in total. And so I manage e-resources, configure Alma Primo, all of our systems. I do cataloging, I do acquisitions, I do a little bit of everything other than, it's easier to say what I don't do, which is reference, ILL, that's about it. Oh, and I got my MLIS from Rutgers.
Hi, everyone. I'm Maria Planansky. I'm the collection management librarian at Alfred University. I got my MLIS from Dominican. There are a bunch of Dominicans. This one is outside of Chicago.
Oh.
So I'm the collection management librarian at Alfred University in the New York State College of Ceramics. And I think similar to Jill, it's a small school and I do a little bit of everything. And so collection management at this institution, it can mean different things really in different places. I'm the head of the technical services department, manage electronic resources, e-resources, do a fair amount of collection development, sort of policy idea work, and in concert with the rest of the librarians. We're all subject librarians. We all do information literacy and teaching sessions. Pretty much all of us do reference shifts and the like. So a lot of variety. I don't do systems explicitly, but I assist the systems librarian in many, many endeavors.
So I already mentioned my job title and where I work. My primary responsibilities include all the ordering for our print collection, non-serial print monographs, and keeping records and statistics involving that collection. Because it's a medium-sized library, I also have subject liaison duties. I'm the liaison to the economics department, and I work chat reference occasionally, but I definitely don't do desk. And I got my MLIS from the University of Illinois. Fun fact, I actually interviewed at Dominican for a tech services position right after I graduated. Did not get it, but I know where it is. Okay, so our first question, what are some tips for keeping up with advancements in technology and the rapidly changing environment of tech services and systems?
That's a great question. So much, I really take advantage of already being plugged into SUNY as an institution. And like, I'd really suggest as a student at an institution to really take advantages of those memberships and partnerships. And so I'm on a tremendous amount of listservs. I'm sure all of us can speak to sort of the SUNY Insider, it's Basecamp, where we sort of brainstorm and team up for things like that. I find that professional memberships are very, very helpful if I get niche enough where I can have like actual either virtual conversations or emails or in person when there's a conference. And so those are the main ways I stay plugged in. I do consume like journal articles and the like, but I find the real-time connecting with colleagues across the US very, very helpful.
Yeah, I would second that. Listserv subscriptions, it can be a bit much to filter through every listserv message, but I do find that when I can just kind of monitor what's going on just on these listservs, it helps me kind of get an idea of what kind of things people are running into and the directions innovation technology wise that their work is going into, and definitely professional associations involvement there. The kind of informal parts of those of that type of I guess socializing with colleagues, just informal conversations that pop up through involvement in organizations kind of lets me know things that are going on in the field. Again, conferences for sure. The ability to attend a conference every now and then really sparks inspiration in me to see, oh, someone is working with this new technology and there are some opportunities for me to utilize that in my work. That's interesting. So I find that really useful.
Yeah, I would agree with all that.
Okay.
I don't think I have anything to add.
So what is one of the most difficult or scariest issues that you've had to fix?
Well, SUNY had our data migration. That was a nightmare. So about, what, 3 years ago now, 4 years ago, we began this process of moving to a new system. And so that's 64 libraries across SUNY having to move their data from an old system into a new one. And there was lots of mapping and lots of conversation and trying to figure out how to move that data and then use a new system. So not only were we as the librarians learning how to use this new piece of software to do what we've always been doing, but use a new piece of software, I had to teach my staff how to use it too. And then we had a pandemic and didn't know how to use it and forgotten how to use it when we got back. So I think the data migration has probably been the biggest and the most daunting project I've ever had.
Yes, and I can attest that at Oneonta we're still running into old POLs that are definitely from Olive that didn't move over correctly. So
yeah, I think as an e-resources person, the first thing I do when I get to work is check my email, and it's always open just in case someone reports like, this is not working. That's always the scariest thing, when it's something very important that is not working, especially at an inopportune time. Last year, it happened to happen the 1 week I took on vacation, and thankfully, I mean, I probably shouldn't have, but I did check my email, and we had all these new residents that couldn't, access really important stuff. And so that's always the specter hanging over your shoulder if you work in e-resources, especially if you're like the only one. So it's just always the monitoring of, this isn't working, why? And if it's an easy fix, not that big a deal. But when it's not an easy fix, especially something that's beyond my skill set, if it's something I have to go to campus IT for, then it's even more scary. So I that would be my answer.
Jill, I really have to agree with you on that. It's like that low level every single day, something could go wrong, right? And that's probably not specific to our roles, but yes, like if there's something that a faculty member can't access, in advance of a class, they want to show this video or a recording or whatever, and then trying to liaise with the vendor and what have you. It's kind of an everyday high pressure, high stakes for that interaction task. Something else I'd add, and I don't know if it's particularly scary, but it is, I think, high stakes. I do acquisitions work. So, that's like tens of thousands of dollars that we have to, invoice, inventory, justify the use of. And I do enjoy that work very much, but, all of our work is very significant in the libraries, especially with COVID, budget shrinking. There is an added edge to it. I think that people should just know going into a position, if that's something, some like decision making, you thrive in that sort of environment, or if it's not for you.
yes, and as an acquisitions professional, yes, it is scary, and I tend to have to explain to colleagues who work as liaisons who use the systems that it is only scary for me. You don't have the permission to spend the money. It doesn't matter what button you push. So, yeah. And next question. What is one of the biggest projects that you've worked on?
Well, we kind of answered that. But our instance of Alma rolled out on my birthday, and it was the worst birthday present ever. I was terrified up until that went live. And we had like a 97% transfer. Like we had very little error instances. So it was really kind of a good present, I guess, but it was scary the day before.
Yeah, I definitely agree that, the Alma migration was the biggest thing that I'll hopefully ever be a part of. We'll see. I think they're like, I've found that there's kind of maybe two different categories of projects. There's the ones that are forced on you, like the alma migration, and then the ones that you do for yourself. And the ones that you decide to do for yourself are like the kind of more fun projects. So I've been working on a project of making our statistics, polling statistics, an easier, more transparent and a better organized process. And that's been a big project I've been working on over the past year or so, setting up sushi feeds and then creating the correct reports and analytics, and then exporting some of those via API and making them look nice on a LibGuide. So that's probably a huge project that I've been working on. But that was a self-created project. And so it's fun for me instead of, you have to move to a new system. Good luck.
Yeah, very familiar with those out of your control reactive types of projects. The library that I work in recently, well, I wasn't there for it, but I'm there for the after effects, went through a reorganization. And so there's a lot of projects that are big and huge and involve supervising others that I've sort of inherited. I won't talk about those. I'll talk about a fun project. So Alfred recently started a zine collection, which is really awesome and fun. And I and another librarian sort of came up with this idea in a collection development sort of way. But then the technical services side of it is, oh, I got to link up with zine distributors and figure out an ordering system that worked for us for that, because they're non-traditional methods of ordering a lot of the time. With the rest of the tech services team, I got to do fun things like, oh, how are we going to catalog this type of zine in a way that really works with our patrons and our students? Because it's not going to be classified the same way as we use Library of Congress classification, but we don't for the zine collection. It's much more intuitive and it's meant to be tactile. And so coming up with sort of a template catalog record for how to go about doing that was, for me, I enjoy cataloging, was quite fun, and then like actually getting into and handling all the materials, also very fun. So certainly a large amount of reactive projects. And then also there's room for play and creativity as well in my position.
Okay, so I guess this is similar to question one. What professional development opportunities would you recommend to new tech services librarians?
Hey, if you can swing it, go to conferences, virtual or in person. The energy is really, for me, unmatched. I find that it's a real nice way, especially if something is recorded and you can get the slides later, sort of dip my toe into things that I'm not as familiar with, but I'm curious about. Yeah, absolutely. Events like these, this is great. Like putting yourself out there, asking a question, that's also really great too.
Yeah, 100%. Any conferences that you are able to attend, either in person or virtually, I found those in my career to be so helpful, especially working at a small library with very few staff. When I started, I had no idea what was going on. I didn't know what direction to go in. And being a member of SUNYLA, so again, joining professional organizations if you can and getting involved in them, not just being a member, that has been so valuable, just getting to talk to other colleagues. And it just provides so much more context to what I do in my job, to see what other people do in their work. And just volunteering. I volunteered to be on the committee in SUNYLA for the midwinter virtual conference. I think in like 2014 or 15 was my first year. And I just volunteered because I, again, was feeling kind of isolated in my library. And in volunteering for that committee, now I chair the committee, and it's a big conference, which is another great professional development. I would like to plug the SUNYLA midwinter conference. We have all of our archive posted online to check out any of them. Yeah, conferences like the SUNYLA midwinter conference, where people have presentations that's very kind of practical skill based, how to type stuff. If you have a budget for it, which people don't always do. You know, there's Library Juice Academy offers some decent courses that I've taken. So again, I found out about most of these professional development opportunities through listservs. So join listservs and you'll see things advertised, some free, some not so free. I think library carpentry is helpful. Yeah, just any opportunities. So just keep your eye on listservs and things get advertised and jump on them if you can.
I received my tenure in 2021. So pre-pandemic, I was sort of having some conference burnout. I was like a little much on attending conferences, and then, you know, switched to pandemic, and it was nothing but online webinars. And so post-pandemic, I'm a little burned out on that. But what I've really overall loved has been taking on interns from library science programs. It keeps you abreast of what is being taught in those schools. And it's keyed me into tools and things coming down the pike out there. And so it's kind of an odd way to get to it, but that working with a library science school or program has really helped my professional development, I think.
Now, does Farmingdale State have its own Master's in Library Science program?
No, no. Actually, we only, I think it's only one master's program that is at Farmingdale. We might have two at this point in our engineering program. But no, I teach a single course through my alma mater, St. John's. Their summer program, I teach their genealogy resources and services course. But whenever there's anyone looking to do an internship from any library school in the area, I take them. New York, we're blessed to have so many library programs right near us. So we've had interns from LIU Post. We've had interns from, she wasn't from Rutgers. Queens College and St. John's. So we take interns.
Yeah, and we're also blessed to have so many affordable professional development opportunities. SUNYLA, even if you don't have professional development money, is an attainable conference to get to, while ALA or Charleston, which is a prominent acquisitions conference, are both very expensive if your university doesn't have a budget to send you. Okay. So what was the hiring process like?
Well, I graduated in the recession, and there were no hiring prospects. I had 2 job interviews. The first one I went to told me they had filled the position already, but I could stay and talk if I wanted to. About what? The second job interview, again, had been filled, but the woman took me in because she wanted to talk to me about my resume. And she said to me that I was a cataloger. Well, all my studies in school had been on youth service. I was sure that I was going to be doing story time for the rest of my life. And she told me, no, that I was a cataloger, that I had experience in a field where other people were afraid to venture. And first cataloging job I saw, I applied for, and I got it. And for the process, we had an interview where they interviewed approximately 10 people. They called 3 of us back to do a presentation. The topic was RDA, which was a new cataloging language at the time. And in my presentation, I said, well, I'm going to show you how you can pick out RDA records in your catalog. And the head of technical services said, we have RDA records in our catalog. And I knew at that instant I had the job. And I really had to think about whether or not I wanted to take a job in academics, because I had really thought it was going to be a public library situation for me. And I don't regret it, but it is the polar opposite of where I thought I would be. We do not have a publishing requirement, although all of our librarians have published. They have talked about adding a publishing requirement to us, but we are 12-month faculty. We have no time to publish, so the fact that we've been able to is kind of neat. We do have a second master's requirement for tenure here. And that's what my hiring experience was like.
Okay, what is your second master's in?
My second master's is in public history. Also through St. John's.
I was hired relatively recently, so I'm happy to speak about that experience. I started this job in 2021. I interviewed in 2021 during the pandemic. I did interview in person, and I think it was a fairly standard faculty hiring position. I'm in a 10-month tenure track faculty position. And so there was that typical, send in your materials by a certain date. We'll hear back from you. You'll hear back from us. There was a Zoom interview that was very, again, like quite standardized in terms of, I assume that everyone had the exact same questions. It was warm, but like a little bit transactional, because it has to be a little bit, everyone has to be sort of treated the same. And then the real thing is, like, once you make it a certain level, is like, for me, I was brought to campus and did a day-long interview, did a job talk. I'm not sure if everyone's familiar with that. I'll just say what it was for me. Gave a 45-minute presentation on an aspect of collection management, which really kind of speaks to like what your philosophy is, what you'll be like as a colleague, and what you have to offer. And then, you're grilled about it. Pleasantly, but it's pretty intense. And then you meet with pretty much every single person you can on campus. Students you have sort of an interview. It's chatty, it's over lunch, but you have interactions with students, which is really significant, at least at my university. It's incredibly student-centered. It's small. It has a kind of a liberal arts, small college feel. Met with the provost, various deans, as well as all the librarian faculty, the entire library staff. It's a real whirlwind. I remember walking out of that thinking I did a great job, but like, what else could I do but just bleed, openly for people at that point? I gave it all I could, and I was very drained at the end of it. So I also did, even though I was very drained, I enjoyed that experience. So going into it, I think other sessions have said this, but you're interviewing the institution as much as they're interviewing you. So just keep that in mind.
I've been at SUNY Optometry for 10 years now, and the hiring process there, I was interviewing at a couple places at the time, and it's funny, the process at SUNY Optometry contrasted to the process at a different library that will remain anonymous. The scary process that at the anonymous library, I was kind of shuffled from, it was, one interview with 2 people in one department to another interview with 4 people in another department, and then me in a giant room full of people. And it was head spinning, but also really not clear. Like there was never like this is what you will be going through today. It was just kind of like, okay, you're going to meet with these people, and then just here's a room full of other people, and there's no consistency. So when I left the big room full of people, I didn't know where to go or whether the interview was over or not. And to this day, I have no idea if I walked out on my interview. Like, I don't know if it was actually done, because it was that unclear. So needless to say, I did not get that job. I'm glad I did not get that job, because that kind of reflects, I'm sure it wouldn't have been that great for me to work there. That contrasted to my experience at SUNY Optometry, where I am now. it was very straightforward, even though it was a faculty position, and it still is a faculty position and tenure track. I didn't have to give any big presentations or anything like that. It was a pretty standard interview, and I was nervous at the time because I was pivoting the position I had previously. It was at Rutgers, and it wasn't a library. It was more of a staff role in the library. Even though I had my MLIS, that was just kind of what I could get at the time. So pivoting to an academic faculty tenure track position was a little scary. And when I was reading the requirements, there were some that I don't have that much experience in this area, but what I did when I was preparing and working at Rutgers, I just took any opportunity for more responsibilities in my role and volunteering to take on anything so I'd be really well prepared to pivot. And when I got to the interview, it was a straightforward interview, and I felt that my experience really could help me pivot, and it just felt like a very good match in that interview. And it was the first interview, and then I came back for a second kind of meet and greet the dean, and then got hired. So it was very straightforward, not stressful. It flowed very well. It wasn't intimidating. So that was really nice. And the fact that I've been there 10 years, it makes sense that it was a good fit.
So I graduated from library school in May 2020. And in about March 2020, I said, this is the right timeline for finding academic jobs. It takes about this long to get through that interview process. And there were 150 jobs the week before spring break posted on ALA job list. There were 20 when I started looking. So it took me 8 months, and the job that I finally did find was not a fit at all. It was a clinical faculty job at an R1 university, doing cataloging and metadata, and my training is really in acquisitions. I know enough about cataloging to get by, and I actually, ironically, do the original cataloging at this university because no one else has the time or the know-how, but they expected a standard that I could not meet, and that was tough. And so after that, I said, I need to be more open to getting a staff position because I really wanted to be a librarian. I paid for the degree. I wanted the title that came with it. And I interviewed at SUNY Oneonta. So I initially applied in October, and by December I had applied to a bunch of different jobs, and I was really upset because nobody had called me back. The day before I was set to move out of my apartment in Alabama, that I got a call from Oneonta, New York, and I said, it can't be, and it was. And so I interviewed initially in January via Zoom or via Teams, I guess. That was a blind interview. They didn't want to see my face at that point. And then they called me in early February, and we set up an interview for February 21st. I flew in, I rented a car and drove down. It was interesting. I'm from Kansas, and at that point I was back with my parents in Kansas City. So this was way out of my range and my wheelhouse, and I was surprised that it felt like it clicked. And a couple weeks later, I got the job, and it's turned out to be a really good opportunity for me. I still want the librarian title and everything that comes with that someday, but I'm willing to see where this goes for the next couple of years because it's been a really good fit. I think my greatest challenge looking at librarian jobs just was finding supervisory experience. I went to library school fairly young. I had never supervised anybody, and at 23 or 24, I didn't think that I really commanded enough authority to do it. So yes, April, there are many ways to come into librarianship. I took what they call the more traditional route, but most of my classmates had taken at least a couple of gap years as well. So yeah.
I had worked in libraries, but not as a librarian. I had been a clerk in many libraries,
Yes.
many academic libraries, which is why when I went for those job interviews right after I got my MLS, I was told I was a cataloger because all my experience had been in technical services. So yeah.
Yeah, that's why I always like recommend that people, volunteer to take on any, anything extra that might help them pivot to the role they want. Like I started as a page at 16 years old, which, helped me then work at the circulation desk right after I got my MLIS because I just needed a job and needed to pay bills, which then helped me at that public library to be hired in a children's librarian position, which I hated, but it was a job. And then I was able to eventually pivot into academic librarianship, but again, at a non-librarian position. But again, they'd give me a job and I wanted to get out of public libraries. So it was just kind of hopping to any opportunity and then taking on any responsibilities I can that would help me pivot to the role that I'd want to be in. So when I was working as a library associate at Rutgers, I was doing reserves and e-reserves. And just the experience working with e-reserves was enough to help me pivot to the e-resources position at SUNY Optometry, which was finally, a tenure track faculty position that I always wanted, but it was a series of hops and pivots and kind of trying to figure out how to get the experience I wanted and then how to market that experience to get a position that I would be happy in. And luckily, I would have been able to, even though I didn't have every checkbox on the job posting that I have now checked, I had enough, and that allowed me to really grow into where I am now. Where the other day I was thinking about, I was troubleshooting an issue with the proxy server, and I was thinking, when did I learn how to do this? Like, I didn't know how to do this when I started here. I don't remember even when I learned that, but I did, and it's just funny how that happens.
Yes, and that's so important to note because there are so many jobs that I didn't even apply for because I couldn't go down all the required qualifications and say I had them. And there were a few where I just took that leap and I got interviews out of those, which didn't result in jobs, but it did show me that having all the required qualifications is not always necessary.
Those list of required qualifications are a dream. They are a dream. Somebody who was on something wrote that. There is no way our list of required qualifications would have been checked by everyone. We do so many things here. We take on so many different roles. And just listening today to all these people who work in SUNY, we're all in SUNY, 64 libraries, you think we're all the same. I haven't heard anyone whose job is like mine. I couldn't fathom the variety of work that's being done out there by people who all have the same title.
I just totally, so sorry, Betsy, you can go.
No, go ahead.
I'm gonna hard agree with you, April. I mean, like those lists don't be intimidated by those lists. I'm in my job. I feel very successful in it. I did not meet all the requirements or all the dream check, not at all. I applied because I was like, you know what? A lot of people feel empowered to apply to things they're not qualified for. I'm going to do it too. And I just liked that fake it with confidence until, you make it. And it worked out. And I really encourage everyone to, I mean, if something is clearly not a fit for you, but if something is aspirational, you'd like to be that person or like to be someone with those skills eventually, go for it. The worst that can happen is you don't have a job. And there is time, I know, associated with the application process, but if it's something that you could see yourself doing and eventually thriving in, please apply. Really, do not be intimidated by those lists.
They will weed you out. They will weed you out if you are not qualified. What they are looking for sometimes cannot be met. I cannot tell you how many across the college, how many failed job searches happen. I'm not talking about the librarians, I'm talking about the college in general, that they are looking for people who can do everything. And it's just not what new graduates are bringing. Just not.
Yeah, no. Yes, that they're looking for a unicorn. It doesn't exist. But if you don't have your MLS and it says you need one of those, don't apply. That one they kind of want. Oh, what was I going to say? I'm not sure. Let's move on to the next question. So this one is quicker. Are you professional staff or tenure?
Tenure.
Tenure. I got tenure 4 years ago. Actually 5.
I am in the tenure process and feeling it. I'll talk more if people are curious about that.
Yeah, and like I said, my first job was non-tenure track faculty, and this one is professional staff. And are you required to research and publish as part of that tenure process?
I am.
We are not required to publish, but like I said earlier, we all have. We're required to have a second master's.
We're like required to publish, but what that looks, I mean, that can look like publishing a LibGuide, you know, writing a LibGuide, things like that, helping faculty, you know, with what they publish. So there's a lot of flexibility, luckily, in librarian requirements for tenure and promotion.
Oh, I remembered what I was going to say. I had a graduate school roommate who gave me probably the best hiring advice I've gotten, which is apply with the confidence of a straight white man. So, yeah. Okay. How much original cataloging do you get to do?
So when I got my job, I was told that, 50% of my time would be spent cataloging. I actually sat down and did math on what the last 6 months of my time has looked like. I'll share with you. 25% of my time has been spent at reference. 20% of my time has been teaching. 15% of my time has been spent on what I call special projects, which is where I worked with my intern on developing an archival presentation. 10% of my time has been advising for a major here on campus. 5% of my time has been devoted to training in my department, students, revising provisions. I would say 5% of my time has been cataloging, of which 1% of it has been original cataloging. And that original cataloging for me is custom edition textbooks. The other percent, what I would call modifying records. I add call numbers, I do modifications on a lot of records, but actual starting from scratch, probably 1% of my time. I think this year I've done 12 records.
Yeah, it's roughly the same for me. I am so rusty at cataloging now that I'm really glad. Like when I started, there'd be some more original cataloging, but now there's just so little that when something does come on my desk and that has to, I'm like, oh no, like I don't remember how to do this. So
yes,
yeah,
thankfully there are so many open resources for catalogers.
Yeah, so it started out with, much more copy cataloging than original cataloging, but there was still a little bit. Now there's just it's so little that I no longer really remember how to do it, or at least do it well.
So I do a fair amount of original cataloging, but the real people who do the most original cataloging work are the staff level catalogers and they do other things too, but at the university, we actually see a fair amount of original cataloging because we have kind of an entire library that's considered like a special collection style library. We have an art school. And so there's a tremendous amount of artist books unique items that are coming in, exhibition catalogs and the like. So doesn't have to be an actual monograph either. It can be a lot, like we catalog the thesis for all of the graduate students, and sometimes it's like a thesis, we would still catalog it, but it's an artifact, you know, so it gets pretty interesting. We also catalog teaching collections of artifacts that are housed in the library and are checked out. So so there is a fair amount of it, but I think that people can be very intimidated by cataloging, and there are so many resources out there that as long as you have a basic understanding of what a MARC record is, and you have the ability to look up like a help guide essentially, and you have the ability to check in with professional networks, my attitude is you'll be fine. Anyone is capable of doing this.
Yeah, OCLC has some good listservs for catalogers. Yeah, so after the disaster that was my first job, I decided I was really not a good enough cataloger to look for jobs that involved cataloging. And so I got here and I said, I am in acquisitions now, I'm never going to catalog again. And one day my supervisor came in and said, hey, you were a cataloger, right? Can you do original cataloging on the things that we can't find records for? And so now I am dipping my toe into original cataloging again. I still don't think I want it to be my full-time job, but I'm learning that different institutions have different sort of like needs in regards to cataloging. And here they don't necessarily notice if I've got a comma out of place, if I've coded the leader a little bit wrong, which is all good because those things matter, but they don't matter as much as my previous university wanted them to. Yeah, so don't be afraid to try, I guess I would say. You may find out that you're not as qualified as somebody else wanted you to be, but you're the most qualified person in the room.
Yeah, one of the things that I've found that is great about being a librarian is that most people that want to be librarians are so enthusiastic about helping in general. So if there's ever anything I have a question about, whether, you know, it would be cataloging or, you know, something with e-resource management, like just asking, like everyone loves to help. And I love to help when someone, you know, has a question that I can answer. So it's one of the great things about being a librarian is that I think it kind of just attracts people that want to help. So in general, your colleagues are going to be helpful if you maybe don't quite know something.
Yes, I would say that too. Many librarians get into it because we like to know the right answer and to tell you the right answer, to share the information. So yes. Okay, so how much knowledge of coding is necessary for a career in tech services and systems? What skills are most important?
That can really vary. I mean, there's so much variation. You know, some universities have an IT department that will handle kind of some heavy back-end technology stuff. But even in that case, it's still helpful. Again, that's such a hard question to answer because it can really, really depend on where you are and what you want to do. For example, my job when I was hired, I didn't need to know anything. And I've been able to have the autonomy to kind of grow my position as I grew in my position, which is great. And where I've found that has taken me has required learning some coding skills. So I've learned, you know, HTML, CSS, JavaScript. That helps with when I work with our discovery system and customizing the interface. Same thing with our LibGuides. We have LibGuide CMS. So having those skills has really helped. I've also learned a little Python because automating some tasks with some scripts has been helpful. Also, not even really creating my own scripts from scratch, finding what other librarians have done, say, oh, I did this cool thing with a Python script, learning enough to modify their scripts to work for what I want to do. So being a, you know, computer science major isn't necessary, but having a little bit of a background to understanding what certain coding skills and languages can be useful for what kind of work is definitely helpful. Being able to at least somewhat read someone else's code and know what it's doing to a certain extent is helpful. I mean, if you do have those skills, excellent, great for you, because that does help, but it's not always mandatory.
So we are officially at the end of the session, but if you guys are all free to stay on for another 10 minutes, and if anyone in the audience has any questions they'd like to ask.
I'll just I'm going to quickly add to the HTML. I took a course because I was really like, I'm going to probably need to use this, and I haven't used it at all. I don't think that's a wasted course because something's going to come up with interface eventually. We also use LibGuides, like the SpringShare platform and the like. So I'm sure it will be used. This was not the question, but something I do use, and I did take a course in, even though it very much intimidated me, is SQL, Structured Query Language, SQL. And so for SUNY, we all use the same Ex Libris Alma. I'm just going to throw some tech stuff at you guys. We all use the same like ILS software, and that for us, it's Ex Libris Alma. And within that, we've been talking about statistics and usage and the like, and you can get it a few different ways. And one of the ways you do is through the database backend portion, where you query, where you ask the software to pull a report based on various fields. And so I took a database course that uses SQL, and it's a lot more intuitive for me to do this work. And it's also part of my job, but it's a lot more intuitive for me to do this work than somebody else who doesn't have that SQL knowledge. And so even if you don't take an explicit course in grad school about this, I would suggest just even doing like a YouTube overview so you can get kind of the basic query language down. It's kind of just, it's like almost like math or logic speak in many ways. And it's a way to obtain information. And I just cannot recommend in your back pocket having just a working knowledge of just what that is. No one even asked me about it in the interview, but I actually use it more, but I use it frequently. So that's just some unsolicited advice.
Yes, and I took a SQL course in library school as well, and one that was technically fundamentals of information processing, but everyone called it the Python course. It was mostly Python. I've found that Visual Basic would probably be helpful in my job because I use so much Excel, but I have not had time to learn it.
I put in the chat that don't leave library school without a databases course. I cannot tell you how many times I've had to explain to my colleagues that what they're seeing is not how it looks. I had a record once, someone came to me, a record I wrote, and said, oh, this is wrong. And I said, well, when you search for it, it came up, right? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, well, it's not wrong. You're looking for it by a title that is now changed. And so there's a field where the old title went. And because you search by the old title, the new record comes up. It's not wrong. It's different. Understand the difference between data and display. Very different.
And to be clear, this course was in SQL, but it was not in PHP. So I can't make the database look pretty on the front end, but I know how to program the back end.
Yeah, Betsy, totally. I can get you the information you need. I'm not going to just it's not like on a beautiful, aesthetically pleasing platter, but yes, I can get a report to you.
Okay. Looking through, I think I saw one audience question earlier. So as recent LIS grads, do you find that more are going into librarianship as a first career or a second or third?
I'm a recent grad. I went to school outside of Chicago where I lived at the time before moving for this job. And it was pretty split. There were a lot of people came in, I was one of them, as kind of second, like further on in your career, or maybe you didn't have a career and you did a bunch of different jobs before coming into it. It was not, the program was, at night. So it was geared towards people who had a job outside of going to graduate school. That was how it was considered. So it's a real mixture. And it's not in any way bad to be fresh out of with your like bachelor's or whatever to go into it. And it's not bad to come in as a second. It's just a variety of experiences.
No, Illinois had both. I think we had more straight out of undergrad just because I did the on-site program, but especially online, you'll find a greater variety. Okay, so another question. I came in a little late, so I'm sorry if I missed this, but do you have any hybrid type work arrangements, or how have your libraries handled that?
I know I'm talking a lot. I am able to do hybrid work. Not all the time, but if I have a day where I feel like working from home and I don't have in-person obligations, and I do frequently have in-person obligations, I can do it. Could I do it for a week straight? I have when I had laryngitis, but it was okay, you know. But yeah, there's an aspect of hybrid. I would not pitch my position as a hybrid position though. I have flexibility is how I would describe it.
Yeah, I have similar flexibility. I can't, you know, just work from home all week. I wish I could. I really enjoy it. And luckily, the type of work I do lends itself to that. I don't do any shifts at a reference desk. I don't do, you know, when I am in the office, I am in my office. I call it my cave because it's just a little windowless office, and I'm pretty much just sitting in front of my computer, really honed in, focused in on whatever project I'm doing all day. So luckily, my position lends itself. I can do it, you know, in my cave or in my living room. So, but unfortunately, you know, due to higher ups, that only happens once or twice a week.
Yeah. April says, I am not allowed to do hybrid work.
No, post-pandemic, we were required to come back in person full time. It's conditional. There are certainly some people out there who I don't know how they're working from home all the time, but I am not allowed. But somebody brought up their office, Jill. Technical services is 95% of the time in the basement. Always in the basement. You're lucky if you got windows. But I am very fortunate because technical services, we have these beautiful floor to ceiling windows. You can kind of
Yeah,
see.
you're getting great light in there.
On a beautiful campus, but yeah, not usual for technical services. In fact, when I got my job here, my former boss said, oh, do you have an office? And I shared a cubicle with her. So I was like, yeah, I have an office. And she's like, do you have a window? I have all the windows, all the windows.
Yeah. I actually prefer to work on site. It helps me to have a work-life balance to go into work every day. And I live alone. I don't have pets. I don't have kids. So that's a good fit for me. But I have a colleague who works almost exclusively remotely, and she had to do a lot of work, I think, to set that up with the office. But she's the acquisitions and electronic resources librarian, which means that a lot of her work can be done online from home, especially because Alma is cloud hosted and not installed on machines. That can be a problem. When I was the graduate assistant at the University of Illinois in that department, when the pandemic came up, we all panicked because we had Voyager, and Voyager only installed on machines. So everybody had to go in and get an emergency laptop, and if they wanted to do work that involves our ILS. It's also true that acquisitions, somebody has to be there to hold the books. We have physical books. It's possible. It depends on your institution. A lot of them are not super hybrid friendly just yet.
On that note, I'm going to have to get us ready for breakouts. And I want to thank again our panelists and our moderator for this session. Stick around, we have that breakout lunch in 4 minutes, where you'll be able to break out into rooms with each different panel and get to talk to them a little bit more in a more intimate setting that's not moderated. So with that, I'm going to end our recording because our breakout rooms will not be recorded.